COVID has presented some challenges economically where we are. And post-COVID, a lot of people are out of work. The COVID has raised an already exacerbated unemployment rate even higher in Los Angeles. So, as well as I know, with more poverty comes more crime. And one of the crimes that always raises during poverty is assaults and robberies, because it's people trying to get it how they live it. Like, you literally got people trying to get it how they live it. So I think that's a piece of what's going on. And also something that I just read about, and I want to try to get a little more extensive about this and find out exactly what's going on, is there's been an exorbitant amount of assault rifles flooding the hood.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build, let's shine, yeah.
All right. What up, wherever you are in the world? I am Kaya Nyambi Shivers, and I am back. We are doing an Ark Republic especial with the homie, Dame Crawford of Uncouth Radio. What up, Dame?
What's going on? How you feeling?
I'm okay. I'm doing a lot better. If anybody has the Omarion, they know that it takes more than 5 days. It is a minute of me recovering, but I feel much better. So let's get into this. Wow, news. There's a lot. So yeah. In December, we're going to set this is all West Coast. Well, this is not just West Coast. This is the wild West segment, because LA is turning back into that reputation of a lot of, and I would tell people, me being from LA, especially like people from the East Coast who come from this very gritty terrain and everything, they come to LA. I went to the project, like, you know what I'm saying? Like middle class housing in Brooklyn and stuff like that. And I'm like, let me tell you about LA. It is very unpredictable. You could be in your flip flops drinking a smoothie and something will pop off and you're like, what happened? So that is, especially growing up in the 90s and the late 80s, where gang activity was its highest, on record. Now, I don't know what we're going to talk about that, but so let's get into kind of the crux of the news. In December, before the holidays, Jamie McBride, who was the Los Angeles Police Protection Director, put out a video. In the video, he advised anybody who was considering visiting LA to not come. He described Los Angeles at the time as the purge, and he said that the police department, LA City, LAPD, LA County sheriffs could not protect you. All right. So he said that in December. Now we are at the end of January, going into Black History Month. A series of things have emerged out of that. But first, I want to know, what are your initial thoughts what was the temperature of Los Angeles when this announcement came out?
When this announcement came out, the temperature was hot. The temperature was hot on the streets. The temperature was hot, even, as some of you know, all the way going up to some high-profile killing in Beverly Hills, which kind of really rang the alarm. Which I think that killing came a couple of days after the sheriff made that.
Jacqueline Avant.
After he made that, and when Jacqueline Avant was killed. So streets have been really hot. Streets have been really heavy. As I was telling you pre-show, yesterday, unfortunately, we lost 4 souls, 2 young ladies, 2 young men in the Inglewood area on 54th and West were killed at a private party at an Airbnb. Just a very unfortunate event, but we've been hearing more and more about things like this happening in Los Angeles. And, as we get into it a little more, the gang culture is erupting. It's like a new generation is happening, and it's very different than what we grew up with, because, as I've talked to some of the OGs out here, the feeling is that these kids don't listen to the OGs at all. So the youngsters are out of control. They have been going against their own G's in their own neighborhoods, which has been, so there's been a lot of neighborhood infighting. Like there's neighborhoods, I won't name, but there's neighborhoods that me and you grew up around that were always allies that suddenly have beef because the younger generation has been taking out G's from the other neighborhood that's literally right next door to each other, right? So we've been seeing a lot of so you think when you talk about a spike in crime here, specifically in South Central Los Angeles, you got to think if a neighborhood is right next to each other, they've been allies all these years, and now they're beefing. These guys all know where each other live. They all know where each other hang out. They all know each other's parents' hangouts and everything. So, of course, if you get to a volatile situation, it's going to be much worse because it's not like there's no guessing game. It's like, oh, I'm going to such and such mom's house to catch him there because I know he goes there and da-da-da-da-da because everybody knows each other's routine. So that it's been very dangerous. The older cats have been trying to squash it and quell it. But even those, like a lot of the older Black gang activists who used to be active gang members who have been trying to be peacemakers, they have been taking out a lot of the peacemakers out here as of late. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I don't think it's something that's got nothing to do with the feds.
Wow. I mean, you jumped, I was trying to warm people up, but you jumped right into the fire. Several things, everything you said, I've been hearing repeatedly since last year that this has been going on. Thought it was very ironic that Officer McBride comes out because that's a political that's a political ploy. However,
that was a political play for sure.
The violence, the gang violence has been out off the chain from what I understand for at least the last couple of years, definitely during the pandemic, right? So you're talking about these younger, bangers. You have a raging drug culture of fentanyl, right? And this is dating back though to when meth came out. Meth was considered a white drug. When meth came to the Black communities, people who people who shall remain nameless told me when they were in the pen, right? When they were in the holding cells, they were shocked because the younger guys that would come in that were 18, 19, 20, 21 were Black. Talking about Black, were meth heads and were exhibiting these extreme signs of mental health issues. And they had never seen it. And they were banging, right? And they were on the rosters. So you have pandemic, you have poverty, you have this new drug culture, you have, but at the same time, a lot of what will be considered the underground market now is prescription pills, right? So the money is cut off. It's a down hustle. And then you have all of these advanced surveillance tactics and everything where you can't really do what it is that you do, correct? And
if you think about a lot of things let's talk about hood economics even, right? Like how you're talking about the pills, not even just the pills. Think about how much of the hood was supplied by the weed man. How much of the hood economics was supplied.
There you go, Smokey.
The dispensaries have took that money out of the hood because there was a lot of dope money from marijuana in the hood, right? And
white dispensaries at that, right? So now
specifically, absolutely. So even the white dispensary, so it'd be different if the dispensaries open were Black and Black owned, because then that marijuana money would basically stay in the neighborhood, right? That money is now being taken out of the neighborhood. That's not our money no more, right? Because that was like you say, the underground, under the table money that was always circulating in the neighborhood. Was that, something that's not often talked about is that weed money, that marijuana money. It was something that's some money that stayed in the hood, right? Like I said, money don't circulate. That's some money that stayed in the hood. Now they're benefiting, profit off of it. So that's another set of circumstances that's taking money out the neighborhood and making those guys going to more hard crime because the money is gone, right?
And to your point, they were illicit marijuana dispensaries in the hood, but those all got shuttered, by the police, because there is a correlation, in my opinion, between regulation of marijuana and the shutdown of these dispensaries that probably were running for a very long time, or these connects that were running for a very long time. But in order to cut the competition, right, then, you have these, these shutterings of these places that the cops knew that they know all of this, right? I mean, there's so many snitches and surveillances and everything. There's a lot that, there's things that are hidden, but there's a lot of things, information that goes on in the channels. It's just when and if they want to stop you, right? So, and what we know about gang culture and just even the underground culture now is a lot of, it's been like this though, but maybe even more so, there's a lot of informants, right? There's a lot of,
always,
there's a lot of people providing intelligence. And to your point, I also wanted to add, Dane, in terms of this underground economy, what also happens is, in my opinion, is that it shifts to a highly digital era, right? So a lot of the underground economy is now scams and things like that. So if you don't have either the tech savvy or the digital access to do
you're missing out on that. Right.
There
you're
you
missing
go.
out on that. Yeah.
There you go. So I think that's really important to mention that. And then plus, in my opinion, when Officer McBride came out with that announcement, I immediately went to look at the more affluent areas about their crime. And maybe a day after, Jacqueline Avant, who was the wife of Clarence Avant, who is supposed to be like a heavy Hollywood insider.
The black godfather of Hollywood.
I don't know who. I mean, I've been in and around. I never heard of him. I guess maybe
I have.
Him being the black godfather, he plays a lot of the behind the scenes role.
No, he's the guy you talk to when you're going to get one of these vice president jobs at the big corporations, when you're going to be a CEO as a black person. He literally is like, he's the gatekeeper. Like I learned about him in 2005, and it was
wow.
I learned about
Why you didn't tell me about him, Dane? Okay,
I thought you would have known, but
no, you know what? I might have heard of him, but his name doesn't ring a bell. I thought it was really interesting that his daughter is married to the Netflix CEO, and that in itself is a very huge power move because wealth marries wealth. So I did not know. And so, you're educating me on that. I have a question about the Clarence Avant case. I know somebody was arrested, but then you didn't hear anything else. Have you heard anything else?
Not a peep. Not a peep.
Did the Avant family make a public statement?
Nothing.
They didn't even make a public statement.
They didn't even make a public statement. No, it's like when you say it went quiet after that arrest, like no more news coverage, not even, because how usually they'll even do a news story about the day that they're indicted, like the day they're in court, the charges are read. Nothing. There's been nothing.
Well, I did read that in Beverly Hills, crime went up by 300% in a matter of months. And the crime specifically was home robberies and theft. They just said robberies and theft.
Robberies and theft went up, and then overall in Los Angeles, homicides are up 17%. But the worst place is San Bernardino. San Bernardino is like, I think it's 30.6 murders per capita for every 10,000 citizens. So it's like the highest in the country.
Can you explain the proximity of San Bernardino to Los Angeles and what makes it a high murder area?
San Bernardino was about an hour from, we'll say about 45 minutes to an hour from Los Angeles. I think San Bernardino became a high murder rate because that's where all the gang members' families sent them after they got in trouble here in Los Angeles. San Bernardino was kind of where a lot of the gang kids were banished. Like if you got in trouble or somebody was looking for you, you got sent to San Bernardino since like the late 90s. So now because of that, you have those families that have grown up there. So their kids are now in it. So a lot of those gang members went out there and started gangs, and there's nothing to do there. So it's a lot more volatile kind of.
It's just the desert. It's just the
desert. It's literally the desert. Like some people call like Fontucky, because it's like the desert, right? So you get this concentrated amount of gang members and their families in there, and they take everything that they was doing in LA and they take it up to this very small space in San Bernardino, and they're all living on top of each other, and you get this crazy murder rate that's going on up there right now.
I want to go back to this killing in Inglewood. You had a little bit more information you were telling me about that killing in Inglewood. What is it that you know about the 4 people at the Airbnb who were murdered?
What I know about the 4 people thus far is that they were not from the area. And they were having a party in an area that seems to be out of their how would you say
affiliation.
Out of their affiliation. Yeah, they seem to be having a party in a place that was out of their affiliation. And it sounds like it was supposed to be like a private party, but somehow the address got out. Somebody found out what was going on. And this is something else I kind of want to talk about as well, that with the rise of the gang violence is, social media has entered the chat. You know what I mean? When it comes to gang violence. So, a lot of the young ladies, they were like posting on social media. And if you posting on social media and the wrong person see and they recognize something, like, oh, I know where that's at, it could be a problem. You know what I mean? Also, we see a lot of people doing stuff on social media for clout. We see a lot of these young cats trying to do stuff to get famous through their gang activity. Like all the way back to, there was a young man who was killed in Hawthorne on his live. He was on his live sitting in his car, and somebody saw where he was because he was on his live, and they came and they killed him right there on the live. So social media has been another part of this kind of new explosion, because for a few years, I want to say about 10 years, gang banging kind of had died down. It wasn't as crazy. And then it's just like this whole new generation of people who are like in the culture, but not a part of the culture for real, because they don't observe any of the old school rules.
Right. Or care to know the code of ethics that existed, or even care to listen to the stories and the sage advice that people who, have gone through the penal system and know all the trappings of when you are marked, as, in these affiliations, which I think is a combination of the disconnect, like the major, there's always these generational gaps. We had it with our parents, our children, have it with us, but it just seems like it's not even a gap. It's like worlds apart. And also people's understandings is very much, I'm glad you mentioned social media, even people's learning and knowledge, a lot of it is being educated via social media. And you and I know, that social media is not, in any way, shape, the best place to understand the world and life.
No.
And there are studies, as a media scholar, there are studies that show how a lot of people are just extraordinarily desensitized around violence, around sexual deviance, emotionally bankrupt. So all of these things, in addition to all of these pressures of wanting to be seen and known and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Ark Republic. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can actually keep this mothership going. How? You can make a tax-deductible donation in several ways. One, Cash App us at Ark Republic Media. And you can also go on our website, arkrepublic.com/donate. As well, you can also donate to our fiscal sponsor and our sister organization at Black Farmers Index, that is Cash App, or also go onto their website, blackfarmersindex.com. We are two Black women-owned media organizations who share our profits so folk can thrive.
Another thing that's going on in Los Angeles is this is the Wild Wild West kicking up again, is the robbery of trains, right? So robbery is everywhere.
Like legit, like stagecoach robberies, legit, like old school train robberies, jumping on the trains when they stop, getting all the stuff they can, leaving a bunch of stuff on the track. So some folks, hey, if you didn't get some of your post office package or some of your Amazon packages, there were a lot of unopened packages just left out there, or they were opened and see that it's something that they don't want, and they took it. So Amazon is going to be eating a lot of costs trying to replace a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, again, I think this all goes and points back to what we were talking about earlier. COVID has presented some challenges economically where we are. And post-COVID, a lot of people are out of work. The COVID has raised an already exacerbated unemployment rate even higher in Los Angeles. So, as well as I know, with more poverty comes more crime. And one of the crimes that always raises during poverty is assaults and robberies, because it's people trying to get it how they live it. Like you literally got people trying to get it how they live it. So I think that's a piece of what's going on, and also something that I just read about, and I want to try to get a little more extensive about this and find out exactly what's going on. Is there's been exorbitant amount of assault rifles flooding the hood, and nobody knows where they're coming from.
Well, the people in Chicago said that at a certain time, on a certain day, at a certain area in Chicago, these mysterious men drop off these boxes of ammunition. I would not be surprised, in my opinion. I mean, LA is a port city, right? So you have things coming in through water, you have things coming in on the train, you have things coming by road. Yeah. It's not only just a port city, it's almost a border city. So it's coming up from Mexico.
Yeah, because these guys are getting a hold to AR-15s and assault rifles.
Right. So
which aren't cheap, which aren't easy to get into the country, into California. You know what I mean? So, you know, it really is akin to the Iran-Contra shit to me that was happening during the freeway Rick days. So.
Right, which is we're talking about the airport. I would not be surprised if these things are coming in through the boats, right? Because you have these huge containers that are coming in. There's not enough inspectors to look at every. If they could smuggle people in these containers, they're smuggling a whole bunch of other stuff. Drugs.
The regulation is severely lacking.
Exactly. And because of the economy that you're talking about, it makes fertile ground for illicit activity, right? Because people are trying to, get it where they can. I don't want to say people are trying to eat. I think that using that as a poor excuse of what is going on.
No,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to also say with the UPS and also with the Postal Service, there's a who could have done better blame game going on between them and the LA City District Attorney Gasson, right? So according to an article, it said that UPS sent a message to Gasson saying that there were 90 robberies a day that were happening on trains. And if you don't know the layout of Los Angeles, the trains come in on the east side of the city. And when it comes into the terminal and it comes into downtown LA, it's highly away from residential areas and everything. So you really don't see. So apparently there is a strip of land where you can hop the fence or scale down to the trains and jump them. So Gasson said that he responded to the Postal Service authorities and said, well, part of the problem is that you do not properly secure your trains. They either are not locked or the locks are not sufficient. So there is this blame game that's going on.
Politics.
And this is exacerbated because when this goes back to Jamie McBride, you brought this up in the pre-show when we were in the show we were speaking with last time, that Jamie McBride was part of the Los Angeles Police Union. The police union is in a nasty fisticuffs politically and publicly with District Attorney Gasson, because Gasson is trying to
he's trying to reform. He's trying to
reform in law enforcement.
Yeah. So since he's trying to reform law enforcement and talk about real accountability, they're basically trying to let everything go to hell in the handbasket to say, see, look what happens when you try to reform the police. See what happens. Crime goes up.
There's soft crime. That's what they're saying. Approaching crime as soft crime is a problem.
Because they think accountability means soft crime, which one does not have nothing to do with the other.
Yes. And so I think in conversation with all of this, and I said this in the pre-show, and I must emphasize this on the show to people who are listening, like what makes Los Angeles such an important case study, especially for people who are living on the East Coast and everything, why should LA get this amount of attention? California is the 6th largest economy in the world. All right.
Yep.
Los Angeles, goes back and forth in terms of being the largest in terms of Los Angeles County. in the city between that and New York, but it has a lot of political and economic influence throughout the country. It is a necessary study. And oftentimes things that are going on in LA spill out into what's
all
going
the
on in the rest of the
metropolises.
country.
Yeah, basically all of the major cities. Yeah.
So it's very important, which leads to my question. When I, was preparing, the playoff game was on between the LA Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I looked at the thing because I don't have a TV. So I looked at the thing and I saw that the Rams won, and I said, okay, so the Rams are now playing the San Francisco 49ers. I asked Dame, where is that division championship going to be held? And Dame, you said
it's going to be in Inglewood at the new stadium, where also the Super Bowl after is going to be, regardless of who plays. So the next two games are going to be in Inglewood. And we all know, like we saw with Staples Center when the Lakers came, when they're ready to clean that area up, they're going to clean that area up. So you're going to start to see a lot of gang sweeps. You're going to start to see a lot of things in this area are going to start to get shut down when it comes to preparing for that Super Bowl. This thing that happened in Inglewood with the 4 murders is going to make everything heightened, and Mayor Butts is going to make sure y'all ain't messing up his money for these Super Bowls coming in here. Please believe it. So y'all keep your head on the swivel.
Yeah, Mayor Butts is going to give up them hind parts again, and and say, hey, do whatever you need to do, because you're not messing up the plug. You are not going to mess up this money. And there's a term that we use called political economics, which means politics and economics always coexist. There's always a political reason for economics, and there's always an economics reason for politics.
Yeah.
Right. So it's seeing exactly. I'm not going to be surprised if they have stationed police officers in the area. They cut off maybe the flow of traffic in some of the communities. I won't be, so these things to me that are very reminiscent in a post 1992 civil unrest, right? So kind of like a mini kind of occupational force, and it's going to be presented as safety, but it's not your safety if you are an Angelino, because what a lot of people don't know is around the LA Rams arena, I found this out with another interview that I did with 2 gentlemen who were fighting for a community center right down the street from Nipsey Hussle's The Marathon store, which is now totally closed. I wanted to say something about Nipsey. Let me say this side note and I'll get back. It's very interesting that post Nipsey Hussle's murder, you now have a total breakdown of gangs. Yeah. One thing that Nipsey Hussle represented was this kind of you could cross borders, lines, and all this other stuff, and it's still all love. And he actually, in my opinion, was part and parcel of, of that, what we saw in the gang truces post 1992. So that was a side note, right? So, back to what LA is looking like around the arena, it is the largest, here we go, concentration of Black-owned single-family housing, not in the state, not in the country, in the world.
Wow.
In the world.
Wow.
And these people I interviewed, this is another previous one. These people are these people are now, mostly the people who are owning it are baby boomers. Some of them are people, Gen Xers like us, who made a couple of dollars because LA is hella expensive, right? Who are owning this. These are people who worked in the city, maybe perhaps worked as nurses, or they worked in sanitation, worked as educators, and they are property owners in this area. From what I understand, taxes are increasing. The transportation is horrible getting in and out of these areas. And it's kind of, and not kind of, but it's this idea of there's an apocalypse type of sentiment that's going on, because my best friend lives not far from there. And years ago, she said that what community members thought was that the Los Angeles Police Department and the powers that be were allowing their communities to go to shit with all of the killings and not,
because you know what's been happening in all those neighborhoods, right? Gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally every spot when it gets to the rock bottom like that, all of a sudden it starts to get cleaned up and you start to see what I call these gentrification gates. Mm-hmm. Anybody who lives in LA know exactly the gate I'm talking about. It's this wooden gate that's high enough where you can't see over into the yard. Almost every time you see that, it's a white family in those homes, or a more well-to-do family that has bought into the neighborhood that's not from the neighborhood. A lot of us have seen it near the Crenshaw district in Lamerick Park. You see young white girls around 1 a.m. walking their dogs, like
walking their little poodles. I almost fell out of my car when I was over there, because I remember back in those days, I was in the jungle, not minding my business, all up in, hey, let me not tell them so. They were lighting it. They almost lit my car up. I had to roll up on it. I'm like, hey, I'm a female, as they said.
Right.
So yeah. And now I cannot believe this, right?
So I feel like how you said, there's a socio-economic ploy to go along with the political ploy. That's what's happening, right? Because like my dad lives in Inglewood, near, not too far from the stadium, and literally once a week there's somebody walking around the neighborhood saying, "I'll give you cash for your house. I'll give you cash for your house." And we've lost a lot of the older people who have taken the cash. And I'm like, now these houses, since they've been doing that, the houses have probably went up about $50,000 in value. And it's going to continue to go up. Like once the train is built, it's going to go up some more. Like there's certain developmental things that are happening.
This is like Brooklyn. This is like when I moved out here in the area, Brooklyn, people would walk up and say, I will pay cash right now for your house. So which brings another point. These tactics are not new. They're just relocated, and they're tooled to fit whatever the cultural specifics of the area are. So we must be very clear. But it's not only that. People are also being pushed out in all of these. You have predatory lenders. And let me say this, not everybody is presenting themselves, as a white person. There are all type of people who are predators in this. Like, let's be clear.
Clear about they hiring our faces to come do the dirty work as well. So
right. And so this is part of what happens in a pandemic, or when economies shift, when the tech spaces shift. How does the underworld then move and do these other type of crimes? Real estate, corruption, predatory lend, all of those things are, part of it. Buying something, pulling out the equity and letting it go to foreclosure, all of these different schemes and scams, people going to houses and, offering these bogus refinance packages. I get text messages. I have not lived in Los Angeles since 2004. I get text messages for my father and for one of my sisters who still lives in Los Angeles, asking if they want to sell their homes. It's very interesting, you all. It's really important. When Dame and I were in high school and middle school, and after that, nobody wanted to come to where we live. It was considered the killing field. Technically, in some days it was, but nobody wanted to come. Now, everybody, and I do mean everybody, wants to be, have a part of the neighborhood. So it would be very interesting to see what these parts of Inglewood will be renamed, but it's so important that people fight back with this. So last thoughts on the wild, wild West.
Just know, like you said, there's basically a civil war going on between the DA's office and the police officers right now. So that's something to keep an eye on. And also, like we said, the rise in gang violence and all that. So everybody be in the house, even with COVID, like between COVID and gang banging, be in the house. Jesus, you know what I mean? Like, be in the house, but, also pay attention to the local election. Sheriff election is coming up. Vote.
Right. Yes. Oh, the local. When are the local elections in Los Angeles?
I don't know exactly. I need to look it up because I've been
Mhm.
backing my man Eric Strong, who was part of Police Against Racism.
Mhm.
I don't know what you call it, an organization that I've been a part of. I was like the community liaison to
Mhm.
talk to the police about the issues that we had with policing in the community. He was one of
Mhm.
the officers that I had a chance to get to know. So go out and vote, get Eric Strong in. If you get Eric Strong in, you got somebody that I can talk to. I have a direct line to. We have
Mhm.
a direct ear, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
maybe we can get some actual change.
Eric Strong is running for what again?
Sheriff, LA Sheriff.
Oh, okay. All right. This is going to be very interesting. I would like to know more about that. There are also several things that come to mind. There are some corruption cases that have gone very quiet. You have the Mark Ridley Thomas corruption case that went cold. All these things are going cold. When things are going cold, it is highly likely that people are brokering so many deals
Yeah.
that they're doing everything but sell their mother's liver
Yep.
in this, right?
Yep.
So you
Everybody
have
going Nino Brown.
Mhm,
It was
yeah.
the educated brother from the bank.
Yes, exactly, right. Christopher Williams.
Yep.
So all you light-skinned brothers, watch out. So so you have these corruption cases that emerged. You also have in Los Angeles. I also wanted to know, you have the mayoral. Is Karen Bass still part of the mayor's race?
You know, I don't know. I honestly haven't paid attention to the mayoral race.
Wow.
I haven't paid. I've been so zeroed in on like the sheriff shit down here that I haven't even paid attention to the mayoral race.
And this is the thing. The law enforcement and conversations around law enforcement. I might have said this in the beginning, but I'm definitely going to reemphasize this now. Is if there was a great case study to talk about if defund the police or whatever that looks like or works or not, LA is an excellent case study for that, because law enforcement has been so entangled so much into LA's history since LA started. A lot of people don't even know that LA was founded by Black people, mestizos, and Mexicans. So it's very ironic that Black people are
and yes,
minority.
Karen Bass is still running.
And Karen Bass is still running, right?
Yes.
And so cops in the city not only acted as law enforcement, but they were the enforcers of the mafia. They were enforcers of segregation. They were enforcers of housing discrimination and redlining. They played such a central part in, to me, the segregatory and the inequalities that developed in the city, and the reasons why Black people are so on the periphery. And I'm talking about Black folk from Los Angeles, because from what I understand, there's a thriving Black international community, but they can navigate outside of those lines. And maybe even the people who migrate to Los Angeles, who usually do not live in traditional Black pockets, they usually go to NoHo, as they say, and or wherever the porn industry is they probably in a porn flick.
The Valley,
So so I wanted to kind of leave that note in thinking about that. Talking about Los Angeles always excites me. It's a very complicated city, and I really do love your lens. All right, for real. Last words are on you.
Just thank everybody for watching us on Ark Republic, and make sure you support Ark Republic, because we want to do some important work, and it's going to go outside of the scope of what we're doing now, but we need your support. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. And know that all of your donations to Ark Republic are tax deductible. People tell me this all the time. You never say donate. I try to run this as a newsy and everything like that, but you know what? I am about pushing forward, and pushing forward means that we need capital in order to do so. So thank you so much, Dane. I do always love chopping it up with you. You be safe. Love to your family, and hold it down on the West Side.
Until next time, ladies and gents.
All right.